All right. All right. Okay. I think I've got this. Hopefully, you can hear me. Uh, Welcome to the third episode of The Night Rider. Let's talk about where we were, what we were doing. Let's see here. Oh, hello, Joshua. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. There's Emily. These are all people I know. This is good. Uh, yeah, there, in fact, may be some napping. I'm old, as you may have noticed, and my I'm getting to be of an age where 9 o'clock feels like a late night thing. so so I get like a. I mean, I'm excited to be here. I got high energy boost hanging out with you good folks. So all right, let's jump into this. oh, my internet looked a little choppy there. All right. Where we last left off, I had invented a toy line from the 70s that became a comic book in the early 80s, a cartoon just a year or two after that, followed by a edgy comic reboot in the 90s called The Intergalaxians. It's at least what the original series was called. I'm sure for the edgy 90s reboot, they gave it some other name because they didn't care for the childlike wonder that comes with Intergalaxians. None of these things exist, but I am going to speak dismissively about the 80s or the 90s edgy reboot, for lack of an actual target to be angry with. Sometimes you need a little rage to design, and so I just invented an enemy. I invented a foe to design against. The Intergalaxians are a spacefaring race from long ago, species that had the toys were basically just little dolls or action figures where you could swap their arms and their legs, their various parts, and make up your own. And the story that came out of the early 80s comic that, again, never existed, was that they were some sort of space weapon. And yes, I am glad. Good. Joshua's a longtime Intergalaxian fan who will be very upset with how I design against what he expects. I will ruin your childhood, Joshua. That's my whole job here. So the Intergalaxians were in the comic book a weapon that would be shot from one ship over vast distances at another ship that they would then take over. But many of them missed the mark and just kept traveling in space for years, centuries, until the civilization that gave rise to them has long since gone. And then they have landed in their various planets and try to find each other across this cosmos. Now, the cosmos of the comic book is not a realistic cosmos. It's going to be a lot of like very large, a little bit like the Vast and Starlit stuff that you may have seen at the beginning of this. There'll be very large planets in close proximity to each other. There'll be people talking and sounds in space and all that. I'm comfortable with that. I'm not trying to do a hard sci-fi thing here. Oh yes. Joshua suggests that the '90s edgy comic was simply called I like that. It was asked of me on Twitter recently whether or not I accept suggestions from the audience here. Yes, I do. With the caveat that I will abandon them without thought. Like, we're definitely in this spot where, as I make things up, I'm just gonna throw as much at the wall as I possibly can, and the stuff that sticks is the stuff that I'm going to hold on to. So, uh, you know, don't get too attached to suggestions, but feel free to make them. I'd love to hear them. Also, you can follow along at home. I should point this out. Let me just start up a quick new. Oh, here we go. Let's just do. I think I've got. There we go. You can follow along at home on. There's a GitHub. If you just go to this address here, https colon backs. I'm not going to read the address to you. Oh, I can put it in the chat too. Let me see if I've got that power. There you go. Then it's an actual link. You don't have to type it in and do anything there. But that's the state of the documents as they were probably a couple hours before we started the stream here. So if you want to see like what's happening, I'm new to the whole Git and GitHub experience, but what I'm trying to do is use it to do some version control on what's happening here. What made me think of this is that I was just talking about how I would abandon things, and this makes it even easier to abandon things because it will record what existed before as long as I save it to GitHub, and you should be able to go back in time and see how it's changed over the weeks, what have you, however long this is going to take, and that frees me up from having to care about a thing that I'm going to get rid of or somehow sequester it in a these aren't the rules we aren't using anymore folder, which has been my pattern in the past. So yeah, let's get to some talking about how this game is going to work. Oh, another thing that I'm doing that's new that I'm not too familiar with is I've got a plugin here for my text editor that does the plugin's called VimWiki, and it creates a wiki style I'll show you how it works here. I don't want to have to describe it but I have here a wiki for the game that I'm developing, and this should also be on the GitHub, but it'll be kind of easier for me to jump back and forth between ideas. I can just go down to, there's the history. We can go down to where the dice are. They can go to, I've got a whole section where I talk about what I'm doing with the dice. I've done some things since the last episode. This is one of the things that was kind of talked about before, but I'll talk about it again now. I'm now trying to catch up with the chat. I'm also not very used to having a chat. Yes, looking forward to the pastel cartoony remake in the early 2000s that made a lot of internet guys really mad. Yes, actually, there needs to be that as well. Definitely. This won't sell if it doesn't make those internet guys mad. Those internet guys specifically. So, one of the things that I was toying around with, now I want to go back to where I was before, so let's do that. Let's see where I hid that. All right, so this document here is my litany of lies. This is where I put down all the stuff that might be true someday, is not currently true. We have to make it true if we want it to be true. And it's just basically where, when I come up with ideas that I'm not trying to drill down into exactly what they're doing, I just throw them up here. Let's see here. And I'm going to scroll through real fast because I wanted to get to something that I wanted to talk. Here we go. Is this where I was talking about? No, I actually want to go back. Apologies. Things to do. Oh, here we are. Right. So we're thinking about like what's going to be fun about this? Like why do these toys with these interchangeable parts? Like why invent these? aside from the fact that that was pretty common for toys in that era, probably going forward. But why invent them if I'm not going to do something with them? So the idea was to attach some sort of mechanical meaning to each part. As we dig into this whole show, I started using. I have some trouble with early on. I go through so many different so much. I go through quite a bit of different terminology for things in the game. Like I talk about these limbs that you attach, but they're not all limbs. Like one over here, we've got arms, torso, lower body, which is like the legs and whatnot, a heart and the brain, and like what are some other things we can do. I started calling those attach points somewhere else in this document, and I'll show you that in a little bit. That probably won't stay. It's just I need you need a word for something so that you can write about it. So that's what I did. Thinking about these, I wanted them to have some sort of mechanical meaning. I wanted to make a part of the fun of the game be about collecting these. Not in a gruesome way, but in a, like, you're going to run around with, a particular arm that has, like, a long and storied history of many space wars it's been through. And then a little bit later, you're going to come across another arm, which doesn't, but for some reason, you just like the look of it better, or, and so you're going to swap your arm out for that one, because that's what you would do if you were a incredible, interchangeable intergalaxian. So I want to give reasons for that. I want to make that... Or actually, it's not so much giving reasons for that. I should clarify that. I want to make that mechanically meaningful because I want it to be a moment of spotlight in the story, right? If you switch your arm, I want everyone else at the table or across the Zoom chat or what have you to stop and take note of that. And not in a, like... how do we divvy up this loot? But in a, ooh, you're going to abandon the arm of Axstar, and you're going to go on and, use this new one that nobody knows the history of, this new mysterious one. That's interesting, right? So I thought about ways to make that happen. Last time we talked, there was talk about, like, how die rolling would work and how that might, some of these parts will work better in certain conditions and then not so good in others. But I think that there's a few other things that can be done here, and I'm still shaky on whether or not I like what we've got for the dice. So the first thing I'm going to do here is check with the chat again, because I've been ignoring it. Yes. All right, good. Joshua's got a whole backstory to what happened in the 2000 reboot and how it made some people become more comfortable with who they are, and that's great. Yes, a mid-season Gundam upgrade. Good. Yeah. Yeah, some sort of morphin time, some sort of we're playing role-playing games. We have little stories that go on in our heads, but I think one of the fun bits about role-playing games is that you are sharing these stories with friends. So it's on me as the designer to help you make the moments that are important to you also important to your friends, right? Like, I don't want to leave you alone in that interaction. I don't want you to come up with something really dramatic, but nobody knows why or how it's dramatic, so no one else gets the why it's meaningful to you. That if that has happened in one of my games, then I've failed you in some way, because I really want to help you have these moments with your friends. I really want your friends to be invested in what happens. So I don't have an answer for how to do this quite yet, but I have some starting points. Let me see if I can, in fact, find those. All right, so if you've been following on Twitter, I have found a plugin for this text editor that allows me to draw straight lines. So now my graphics have just gone through the roof. So the idea here is that we have cards that represent these different limbs. The reason why, it's not because we're actually going to have cards. I'm going to just put my foot down now. If there are cards for this game in the end, they're print on demand. But most likely this will be some sort of web app or something like that. But I'm thinking about them as cards in a physical space because it's easy for me to prototype that and to just feel that through. The idea, I kind of mocked up a card here where you would have like, here's a haul driver. It's got this gorgeous little picture, which is literally just a emoji, because it's the best graphics I can do. The attach point, where it goes, the attach value. This is something I haven't really fleshed out yet, but as I was thinking about some sort of point buy thing or whatever. We'll get into that in a second. And then on the card, there'd be like a little history. The fabled right arm of Axstar, thought lost to be at the Battle of the Neos Nebula, whatever. These are red and underlined because there's a spelling. It's those aren't real words, is what it's telling me, and it's right. So and then you would have like a stat block at the bottom. So this would look like, like a magic card or something like that. The idea here was that this would give you a D6 in your might, but if you're dealing with solid material that you're trying to punch or pound through with this hull driver, you get a D4. The way the dice are organized right now, the lower the die, the more wild it is. That's a thing I guess I'll talk about in just a moment. This is interesting. I feel like I have to refill everyone in on what's going on each episode, partly because I have to remind myself I don't know what we actually went over in the previous episode, but also like I don't want to make people watch 3 hours of this just to get caught up. So maybe I'll start editing previously on. I'm lying. I won't edit a previously on, but I might write one up next time that I can just read off. Fallback die. I thought at some point that like if you're going to use this right arm in situations that don't require might or pounding through the hull of a spaceship, you might need a die for what that represents. And then maybe it has some special rules, like if you're trying to punch through jello, it's more difficult. And then finally, and this is the part where I was thinking about the spotlight thing, maybe like when you get these, you have to answer a question. I mean, I love leading questions. I think that they're like peak design, and it might be kind of fun if you get an arm or bottom half, like was brought up last time, like a scorpion bottom half, and then it asks the question like now I'm blanking on a question here, but like something. When I do leading questions, quite often I go obviously to the dread thing, so I won't be as grim or horrific as that might be, but it would be something along the lines of like how do you keep the poison from seeping into your heart, or how, if you've got this poisonous stinger that you've now attached, or maybe these questions will tie you into the other players. I have to, think and design through that as well. But having to sit and answer a question in front of everyone before you put an arm on is definitely a way to just take everyone's focus off of what's happening and on the fact that you are physically and sort of changing your character, physically changing the body of your character, and you're maybe changing your characterization of them because of this new bit. So that's what I was thinking, and then I started thinking about, and you can read this through in the GitHub here, so you don't have to read it off the screen here. But like maybe coming up with for character creation, a drafting system. There's a danger here because if you're doing it like this, then everyone makes characters at the same time, and then I got to come up with rules for when someone joins the group later. Might not be difficult to do that, but the idea here was that you would have a whole bunch of cards that represent all of these various interchangeables, and you would be dealt a hand, and everyone else would, and then you would pick the one that you want for your character, and you do that, and you go and then pass like a drafting game. So you pick a card, then pass your hand to the left, and you keep doing that until everyone has picked enough to equal the number of attachment points on their character. Maybe not the right one. You may have too many arms or something like that, and then you can maybe do a little trading afterwards. It's not fully fleshed out. We're very much at the beginning here, and I don't know if I am going to keep this, but it might be kind of fun if during the trading part is where we lay down the questions that are like, maybe the cards come with two sets of questions, one for if you find it in the wild, and then another for if you make a character with it and you've traded it with someone, then you have to answer a question about that someone you traded it with, making connections between the different characters. So these are all opportunities. It's all very nebulous right now. Earlier today, I was thinking about tossing all of this out. I'll be honest with you. Let's talk about the dice, and then we'll see. I'll go back in there. So we talk about the dice here. So last time, I'm going to catch up on the chat here. I like that the idea that designers have to make special moments are wholly special for your friends. Yes, I mean, I like it too. I think it's when I think about the more I play games, the more I think about what it is that I'm enjoying in the game and how I can make that happen. Or like if I'm not enjoying a game, because that happens too, or not. Like sometimes you can be playing a game where it's not optimal, let's say, and then think about like what is it that you were lacking? What is it you weren't getting that you were getting before in another situation? And that means different things for different people. I strive to design games that fit what my needs are at the table, because that's the things that I can best understand. And if that happens to fit with other people, I am very happy about that. And in some cases it has. But like, when it comes down to it, the only thing I can truly understand is what I'm trying to get. It's funny too, because I'm often designing games. No, I take that back. Well, I don't take back that it's funny. But the thing is that I'll do that. And in the beginning, I was doing that as designing games for me as a player. But because I was the one designing it, and I'd be the one demoing it and teaching it and playing it at conventions, it ended up being that all of these burdens kept falling on me as the GM to make the things happen for the players when I wanted to be on the other side of that. And then eventually it clicked in my brain that I could design games towards being easier on the GM, knowing that that's the spot, that's what I'm going to be doing with this game over and over again. And then not just easier, but designing things in it for the GM to enjoy. This is in Swords Without Master, the discovery phase is one of my all-time favorite phases. Wait, I say one of my all-time favorite phases. There are 3 phases. They're all tied for first. There's 4 phases. There's a hidden advance phase. Is there 5 phases? I don't even know my own games anymore. Anyway, the point is, what I really love about the discovery phase is that it's just this moment in the game as the GM where I could just sit back and let everyone else tell me what the adventure's about. I don't like it. It's this point where they get to tell me what they're trying to uncover. They not even that. They just tell me the mysteries and what the answers to the mysteries are, and then their characters start exploring it. So, that's fun because I have to play that game a lot, and I can't keep coming up with that stuff. So, yes, the 6th secret phase. Anyways, we're going to talk about this game, not old games. I wanted to use all of the different dice. This game is shooting towards nostalgia, and nostalgia for me involves these dice. The D6, the D4, the D8, the D10, the D12, probably a D20 in there as well, but probably percentile dice. There's just something about being able to use all those that's a thing that a childhood Eppy would have wanted in this game. And let's see if we can please him. So one of the ideas that I thought about was this chart here where you would have a target number, but the target number wasn't a number you were trying to roll over right away. It would be a number that you're building up to. It could also be a number you're reducing. This could be number reducers. This could be just hit points that you're taking away until something is reduced to 0. Right now, I'm not thinking about it that way, although like mathematically it's identical. It may change. But anyways, so you got a number 17. You're trying to beat 17. And the idea is that you roll your dice and you'll keep adding the value that you roll on the dice to your, what did I call it? Toiling total, because it sounds like toilet. And oftentimes I will give things really bad names to incentivize myself to change those names later. And then that backfires and I keep those names. But anyways, the toiling total. So you roll your D6 and you roll a 4. And so now you have 4 and you're that much closer to the 17 that you need to do the thing. And then you get another chance when your turn comes around, you do it again and you keep doing that. Now, if you rolled a 1, the idea was that something bad would happen. It could be a failure. It could be something would go wrong, probably related to the interchangeable that you're using to make this happen. Yes, the butt system is an example of that, but I'm keeping the butt system. Anyway, okay, so that was a non sequitur for people watching on YouTube. Somebody in the chat just mentioned the butt system, which is a part of a game that I have been working on for quite some time in the background. Okay, back at this. So the 1 would be a setback. It's something bad that happens that isn't like a total failure. It doesn't cut you off completely. And then what it does is you get to learn from it. So the next time you make a roll to attempt this and to overcome this target number, originally I think I said it doubles what you rolled or whatever, but I thought it might be fun to just allow you to change your die size for that next roll. Plus or 1 die size, I don't know if it matters. Maybe you just change them entirely. Again, this will come out at some point. We're going to start writing some code to do a whole bunch of rolls. I don't know if I'm going to do that live. I don't know how comfortable I am writing code live, but I'll write it and it'll be available in the GitHub and we'll run it live. That'll be fun. So that was a 1. And anything between higher than that but less than the maximum you could possibly roll on that die, it would just be added to your toiling total. But if you rolled the maximum available on that die, then you just automatically get whatever the target number is. You get right up to that target number and succeed. So what this would do is it means that the bigger the die, the more reliable it is. Like a d12 is obviously helpful if you're trying to beat 17. It's going to be more helpful than a d8. But a d4 has a 1 in 4 chance of getting that 1 and a 1 in 4 chance of getting that 4 and just automatically succeeding, right? Like you have a 1 in 12 chance of just doing it on your first roll if you use a d12. You have a 1 in 4 chance of just doing it on your first roll if you have a d4. That seemed like that would be kind of fun and significant. But again, I don't... I've been going back and forth on this because I like the idea, but I don't know if it suits what I want, how I want this game to play. It's because if that's the case, there's going to be a lot of here's a number to beat, and we're going to just keep rolling until we. Okay, so this is. So it would be a lot of here's a number to beat, and we're going to keep rolling until we beat that number. And now that's adjustable. Like maybe if that number were 6, it would be, okay, so if it's a 6, then lots of these dice have like a d12 would have a 50% chance of succeeding right off the bat. But then I don't know if it matters. What I'm saying is that this is sitting on the chopping block right now. It's ready to be abandoned. If I come up with something else that I like, I'm not satisfied with it just yet. But that's got me thinking about what I actually want this to feel like while playing, because I do want it to have. If you've been following me on Twitter, I've been talking about chunky games a little bit, games with the big rule books, and I enjoy those. Not necessarily more or less than other kinds of games. They're just sometimes I have a hankering for them, and I kind of have a hankering for making this one like that. It may not happen again, but at the moment, I'm just gonna see if I can build something that can have a little chunk to it, like where you make these sort of tactical choices about which limbs you're gonna take into battle and whatnot, rather than having it be entirely stylistic or what have you. So I don't know if what I'm doing with the dice here serves that purpose, or if it just is going to be this just weird mechanic that people have to learn. I don't mind having weird mechanics. I just don't necessarily. Anyways, sounded like a downer, but really what's happening is I just keep thinking about it and trying to make some decisions about it. I guess this is one that I'm gonna have to feel out with a little, just writing up a little bit of code to see how long it will take. Okay, so let's talk about how D&D works. I am gonna get into trouble here. All right, hold up. Let's decide if we want to talk about how D&D works. Okay. Let's talk about this thing that happens in D&D. Specifically, in D&D, you get a power, right? There's something... okay. One of the things that makes D&D do some of the things that I was talking about earlier, where it gives you a little bit of spotlight and makes your character, or makes your players look at maybe mechanical. Your fellow players look at some of the mechanical choices that you make or whatnot. Um, is not it's sandwiched on either end of, say, a fight, right? Uh, you have these moments where you're making characters or you're leveling up characters where you have powers. The wizards will get spells, like fighters will get. I think they get maneuvers and things like that now. But they'll get maybe they'll pick up a magic sword at some point. But you get these things that say like, oh yeah, I think that here's the example. It's from olden days, from AD&D. You like a wizard, or not a wizard, a fighter picks up a sword that they've found in a dungeon, pulling it out of the moldy hands of a skeleton, and they find that the wizard's like, it has a certain glow about it, and they eventually do the identify on it and spend all that money, and they discover that it's a +1 magic sword, which is pretty awesome just to start off with. Back in those days, that was a significant bonus. But it's also +3 versus undead, and suddenly like everyone's like, what? Like now you were a fighter, but now you're a fighter who we're going to call on to, like, we're going to seek out undead to try this on, right? Like, it changes things. It makes things more interesting. Then you seek out those undead, and you have the fights, and those fights are a series of rolls that have their own little ups and downs, but it's, long. Maybe not long, but like it's a lot of number reducing. You're rolling and you're reducing the numbers of the skeletons, and maybe they're reducing. Well, they're probably reducing your hit points, and it's like some bookkeeping and stuff like that. And it doesn't. In the average, this sword is helping you. But are there moments? And usually, then you get like to an end where something's going to happen and you triumph, or somebody dies tragically, and it puts it in your brain, and it's very memorable. So you have these two spots, like this beginning one, and then how you prepare for it, and then how it ends, that are largely, like, there definitely can be things in between. There could be very good rolls done in between. But that's, a little, well, no, I mean, like, that's important because random rewards and whatnot stick in your head more than, just getting the things you over and over, just getting the reward that you're expecting. But there's just something magical about those two ends of it, I think. The first part where you're preparing for it and you're like, oh, we've found this sword, or, oh, I've got this spell now. Now I have sleep. And or now I have fireball, and now we just are going to situate things so that I don't know why I'm talking so much about D&D in this right now. I should walk away from it. But basically what I'm trying to say is that, like, I want that beginning and that end, and I want to reduce that middle part where it's all just kind of coming out in the average. I don't want to eliminate it entirely, because I think that for this style of game, you do want like I'm going to use the word tedium, and I don't mean it in any bad context. I mean, you want to go through a point in the game where you're just doing the work, right? Yeah, so Phil Young says, if I have a cool power, I want to use it. If I pick the power, I'm saying to the GM I want to be in situations where it comes up. And that's, yeah, absolutely. There's a sort of a weird interaction there where sometimes having a cool power exists. Some people will pick a cool power to just make sure that they can get out of those situations all the time. But let's ignore that for now, because if you're not putting a change, you're not swapping your brain out just to avoid talking your way out of problems. I don't know what I'm saying there. Anyways, all right. We haven't. I know it doesn't look. I haven't typed a lot. I feel like that doesn't look like game design, but we are doing game design. We're talking things through. Um, Again, this is where I do my game design by just talking to myself. Poor Emily is. If I'm going to get into the habit of just talking out game design aloud here, that might change the whole work from home situation. I'm going to be locked behind doors and soundproofed. So, okay. Yeah, I've said a lot of things and I haven't written them down. Let's go back to where we were. In the... Yeah. Okay, so maybe I do talk to myself somewhat. Oh, I did want to focus. All right, that's interesting. All right, so, how do I make this very nebulous thing into a note that I'm going to remember later? This is also a problem in how games get designed here. Let's talk about the tedium, right? We can make another header. Some tedium will be good. Alright, that seems close to what I'm trying to get at there. Nope, let me see if I can't put that in the middle of the screen so it's a little easier to see. Yeah. This is definitely going to be one of those spots where I'm going to think about what it is we're doing here, right? We've got these space knights. Oh, I should bring up on Twitter, I don't know, I don't know what the etiquette is about naming names. Maybe I'll avoid naming any names until I get permission for people to say it. But on Twitter, I was asked if I would accept input and ideas, and I said, yeah, that's great. Again, but I may abandon them. But the idea that followed that from the person who asked was talking about the different interchangeable parts, and I have in here the heart, where I was the values and your virtues and your foibles and whatnot, and the suggestion on Twitter was that rather than have it like a piece of a heart that can kind of come out, make it lean into the knight business, right? Like the space knight thing, and make it some sort of heraldry, because that heraldry can also have parts that get assembled. So you can, instead of like having like a single heart that comes with a set of values, you would actually assemble your heraldry out of the values that you want. And I like that. I really like that, and it might be like too many things to assemble there. And then the other thing that came to me, and this is a very important thing, if you're new to game design, I cannot recommend enough those moments after your alarm clock went off in the morning, just bring the game into your head. It's Dan Marashek. So he's in the chat here. So yes, he was the one who came up with the heraldry. It's a great idea, and it's one that I'm definitely going to throw in the mix here. Anyways, if you're new to game design, the alarm clock goes off in the morning. Wake up just enough to think about your game and then fall back asleep. That sometimes gets some stuff done for you, because I realized that I had completely forgotten that all of these Intergalaxians are going to have wacky helmets, and that's going to be important too. But then, like I said, I woke up and I thought about the Intergalaxians, and I fell asleep, and then I had this dream of that I had a poster of all the original Intergalaxian toys with all their names and their different parts, and I very vividly remember one of the helmets from this poster. So a couple things. Number one, wacky helmets should be number one in most of my role-playing game designs, and I don't know why it wasn't here. But second of all, I'm going to work towards that poster happening. Like I would love to, at some point, if this game comes about at all, I would love at some point to commission someone to just do a poster of the original 6 toys, the original 6 incredible interchangeable Intergalaxians, with their wacky helmets and their scorpion tails and ray gun arms and chainsaw arms and their glow-in-the-dark brains underneath the wacky helmets. I woke up upset that this thing did not already exist in the world, so let's make that happen. Jacob's Pillow suggested that that's like Salvador Dali's method, and yeah, I don't mind that comparison. So wacky helmets. Let's go up here. The movie Hearts in Armor has some good helmets. Yeah. I haven't seen it. I'll have to check that one out. Definitely the toys of the era have quite a few delightful helmets. Also, I, like everyone else, I've been watching what's been going on with the Heathcliff comic, and helmets keep coming up in that. So I think I would be a little bit less direct than just a regular old motorbike helmet with the word meat printed on it. But things with like antennae sticking off of them, big radar plates, things that look inspired by, the Shogun Warriors and those toys. All right, waxing nostalgic about this. I've been a little bit all over the place, but I realize as we were talking through all this, one of the things that I really do need to kind of tackle, and maybe this is a thing I'm going to look into trying to tackle before we get to the next episode, which will probably be next week, is just thinking through what I would like a typical adventure to be like, because that's really what it's coming down to, is that I don't have it in my head what I like. Do we all start off together? Do you have like are you alone doing your lonely space night work and then occasionally crossing paths, so you just kind of have these rotating stories? That's something that could be done. It might be fun because you can let people play characters in each other's stories, and then see where they intersect and whatnot. It would definitely fit this larger theme of being shot out into space and not landing, not hitting your target, and then having to seek out your own people. or are you, you know, have a lot of you found each other and you've created a society where you seek each other out, which is a good impetus for movement across this cosmos, and also try and do good in the world because, I think we did talk about last time some possibilities of things to have to deal with, things to do. I think it was the Lackawanna. Hunt other intergalaxians for your parts. Feels like that's something from the 90s comic. I don't know if I necessarily want to make it the thing here. Code of honor compelling you to mete out justice. I think it. All right, hold on. Let me just. This is definitely something that needs to be moved closer to this one because these two are thematically similar, if not the same thing. I think I had a justification for why they were different last time, and now I've lost it. But so that's it. That's the thing that I really need to kind of. Oh yes, Emily points out that these sound like great plots for different eras of the show, which actually. So, what if? See, now that would be kind of fun if you had like a little bit of a adventure generator that was built off of each era. Because if you think about it, following the model that I've noticed, or what I've. All right, so the 80s, okay, I could say this is how it is because I've made up this whole world, right? So the toys, they don't specifically have a narrative beyond like their names and maybe an indication of who the good guys and who the bad guys are. But otherwise, they're just the incredible interchangeable intergalaxians. And the commercial will absolutely tell you that you can imagine that they've traveled through space in search of other intergalaxians or, you know, whatever, but won't say that they are. They're just saying you can imagine that. And then the comic would be in the early 80s. It would definitely be like, you know, an adult's making this comic, probably told to aim it towards kids, but like not really dumbing it down so much because they want to be compelled by it. Like I love those early ROM comics and the Micronauts and whatnot. So, you know, looking at that level of like, yeah, kids are going to enjoy it, but also like let's have some not mature themes, but just some plot lines that are aimed. Well, yeah, I don't even want to make any clarification. But then you would follow it up with the cartoon, which would be goofier, more very present, you know, comic relief. The villains would be they'd have their edges kind of worn off a little bit to make them not as scary, something that the kids can face and just want to see defeated by the good guys. And then you would go into the 90s, and then you'd have like you could make some really good hay with making fun of all the edgy in the 90s comic series where, you know, somebody wakes up and doesn't realize that they're an intergalaxian and they're just in like Brooklyn, New York, 1996, and slowly it starts uncovering these traumas of the space war. And but anyways, the point is, it might be fun to write this game so that you as a group decide which of those eras you're going to play in. There may not be enough there in the just toy alone era, but for the other three, I think that would be kind of fun. So that's something to think about. Like, there's different ways we can adjust that. We can, if we had the different limbs based on cards, we can certainly have you build the deck through which your characters are going to be made out of things like, do we include just the first run of the characters, or do we include all the characters that were introduced in the comics, or do we include all of them, that kind of thing. So there's I think there's lots of good things to have there. I've absolutely talked myself into it. Yes. Jacob's Pillow mentions Visionaries, Knights, the Magical Light. And I do believe in that Twitter thread, Dan, and you can correct me on this, Dan Marichek, specifically called out the Visionaries. But or if you didn't, you called out some other toy line that made me think of the Visionaries. That's definitely another one on the... All of these are, I think, owned by Hasbro, so... Again, I'm going to stick with the interchangeables. There's the Intergalaxians. Those are the ones that I have the license to. So, but inspiration is definitely going to come from there. So let me drop this at the bottom here. Oh, no, sorry, at the bottom. That's what I wanted. And I'm coming up on my hour here, so I should just... And before I forget it, I absolutely want to add the get something in there for the 2000s. Because why not? Like, if we're going to do these different eras that we're going to play in, then yeah. All right, so I'm coming up on my hour here. I've talked a lot. I think I'm getting better at talking and worse at typing, but that's fine. We're going to keep doing this as however it works. So now the next thing I should do is ask you to like and subscribe, I believe. Let me... you can find me on Twitter at whoa! What's going on here? Oh, I know what's going on here. This is the... All right, you can find me on Twitter at Eppidiah. Yes, the call to action. If you want, if you like some of the fiction that I've thrown out here, and you want some sword and sorcery in that vein, maybe you want to get yourself over to Worlds with S, without Master. So the worlds are plural, the Master is singular. My website that I've not done much with because I'm working on a new version of it is dig1000holes.com, but if you go there you can find out where to buy my other games, and that's how I am financially supported. And if you're interested in that, in helping me continue to write games, check that out. I should mention my most recent game is not listed there because it's published by someone else. It's Dread. It is a I've taken my old game Dread and made a Judge Dredd version of it. It's kind of a speed run of Dread version, so check that out. That is called that's what it's called. There we go. Thank you for joining me, and I'm enjoying this, and so we'll be back next week, and maybe I'll have a little bit more to talk about. All right. I should have made that really a lot more interesting, and also I should have been looking for how to turn this. Okay, here we are. Now I'm ready to stop the streaming. Thank you once again, and we'll see you later.